So it is Sunday, the 18th of March, 2018. I'm just starting up my protest against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse and various other Unitarian Universalist injustices, abuses, and hypocrisy in front of the Unitarian Church of Montréal. And just had to change the battery in my camera because it died unexpectedly on me. It had 60% power and suddenly was down to zero, presumably as a result of, relatively cold weather conditions, but maybe something else. Anyhow, just put in a fresh battery. Hopefully it'll last a little bit. And we will just circulate here. So I was talking about, how my unsafe sect two-word zinger picket sign slogan has been in existence now for the better part of 20 years. I first displayed it, if I remember correctly, in 1999. It's 2018, so do the math. And I'm coming up for the 20th anniversary of beginning my protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montréal. I began my protest in May of May of 1998. And I've been doing it pretty steadily ever since then. There's been a few interruptions here and there, but essentially my protest has never officially ended. And it's been suppressed a few times. And I've taken some, short breaks. Sometimes I've just gone on holiday for a little while. Sometimes even been away for a month or so, but I've always resumed the protest and continued it, when I've been able to do so, being in town. Obviously, and I have to say, actually, even when I've been away in other places, I've sometimes protested in those other places in one way or another. But in terms of protesting in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, it began sometime in May of 1998. I can't remember the exact date. It might have even been April. And it's been going ever since. And the reason it's been going ever since is because Montreal Unitarians are just incredibly stubborn when it comes to refusing to acknowledge any wrongdoing, refusing to acknowledge that my protest has even the slightest validity, and that their approach has always been to try and suppress the protest. They've always tried to silence me instead of dealing responsibly with the issues that I'm protesting against. The most recent effort by Montreal Unitarians, or at least one particular Montreal Unitarian, to suppress my protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal and to otherwise silence me, was the fact that on December 11th of 2017, just a few months ago, I was arrested for the alleged criminal harassment of Montreal Unitarian clergy abuse enabler Sue Montgomery, who also happens to be the deputy mayor of Montreal since late November of last year. So on November 5th of 2017, Sue Montgomery was elected as the mayor of Côte-des-Neiges Notre-Dame-de-Grâce Borough, which the Unitarian Church of Montreal happens to be in at the southeastern extremity. And then I believe on the 27th of November, she was appointed as the deputy mayor of Montreal by Valérie Plante. So that's a pretty prominent position, basically, vice president, as it were, to Valérie Plante. Essentially, deputy mayor means that when Valérie Plante is out of town, that Sue Montgomery is the mayor of Montreal. That's a pretty high-end political position for someone who has pretty well zero political experience, at least in terms of actually being elected to office. But what's interesting is that literally 1 month after being elected as the mayor of Côte-des-Neiges Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, and just a couple of weeks after being appointed as the deputy mayor of Montreal, Sue Montgomery filed a complaint with the SPVM, that's the Service de Police de la Ville de Montréal, in which she accused me of, essentially she tried to pretend that I'm stalking her, and she mentioned an encounter that we had on the 5th of December, where I was standing on the street a little further west at the corner of Marlow in front of the Vendôme metro station. I was just waiting for a bus to come along to go home, and I was talking with an acquaintance. Most ironically, I was talking with this acquaintance about Sue Montgomery's complicity in Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse cover-up and so on, when she came walking down Marlow Street. And so I saw her. I was a little surprised to see her, especially since we were talking about her. It's one of those, speak of the devil moments. It's kind of interesting in that I was speaking about essentially evil behavior on her part. And so I saw her and I said, "Oh, Sue, we were just talking about you." I think I said, before that, I think I said, "Oh, look who's here." I think I said, if I remember correctly, I said, "Oh, look who's here. We were just talking about you, Sue." Basically, that's what I said. She ignored that, just walked by. But she had to stop a short distance away at the stoplight before crossing the street because it was a red light. So she had her back turned to us. She was maybe 10 to 15 feet away from me. And so I took the opportunity to remind Sue that she falsely accused me of libeling her on the 4th of December of 2014 in a cease and desist demand letter written by Montreal media lawyer Mark Banty, and that she has yet to formally withdraw that false libel accusation and apologize for it. So I just reminded her that she was still falsely accusing me of libel because she hadn't withdrawn the accusation, and that she needed to make amends. That my exact words were, you should make amends. So that's it. Basically what happened is Sue Montgomery used this chance encounter as a pretext to accuse me of criminal harassment, basically trying to pretend that this was a stalking incident because it occurred near her home. Now, what's interesting is I literally do not know what Sue Montgomery's address is. I did know that she probably lived in NDG, in that she'd been elected as a politician to represent NDG, but I didn't know her address. I didn't know where she lived. I had no idea where she lived. And apparently, according to her testimony, she, lives on Marlow, not far from the corner of the Maisonneuve Boulevard. Well, that may be true, but I certainly wasn't standing in front of her house when she walked out of it or anything like that. And I was basically, as I said, waiting for a bus to go home, and had encountered a friend of my younger brother, and I was talking to him. And as I said, I was talking to him about Sue Montgomery's complicity in Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse cover-up efforts and so on. So this was a pure chance encounter that Sue Montgomery tried to pretend was me stalking her. So we'll see what comes of that, but it's in my view, it's a misuse of Canada's criminal harassment law in an effort to silence me. I was forced to sign a conditions paper, which initially prevented me from being anywhere near not only where Sue Montgomery works and so on, which prevented me from going to city council meetings and asking questions, But the Unitarian Church of Montréal was also expressly listed in the conditions. Now, what was interesting is, it looked very much, like I was prohibited from, going to the Unitarian Church of Montréal as part of the conditions. However, when I showed the conditions to a lawyer, he told me that, where the Unitarian Church of Montréal was listed was actually an exception. So in other words, it was basically saying this is an exception. However, he also believed that this was just a mistake on the part of the police who filled out the form. He believed, as I do, that this was not an express exception, not intended to be one. It was intended to be just a listing of where I cannot be. And I basically, until there's some evidence to the contrary, I'm quite certain that's what it was. So essentially, Sue Montgomery misused Canada's criminal harassment law to not only try to silence me in terms of her own complicity in Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse cover-up and so on, but also to prevent me from protesting against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, as I am doing now. So basically, she just continued her efforts to, cover up clergy abuse. When she participates in efforts to shut down my protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, she is directly affecting my ability to inform the public about Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse and cover up and denial of clergy abuse by the Unitarian Universalist religious community. So she's totally complicit in the cover-up. Indeed, as far as I'm concerned, she's an active participant in it. So we'll continue to protest here. But it is the 18th of March. It is the day of Montreal St. Patrick's Day Parade, which starts at noon. So this protest today may not be that long. So anyhow, got a few people showing up. Oop, looks like my picket signs got blown down again. Guess we need to pick them up. So we'll do that. Then we're going to have a look and see if the camera's still actually running. Hopefully it is. Would like to have this little soliloquy recorded. Oh yes, we're okay, 13 minutes, so that's good. So Sue Montgomery, as far as I'm concerned, abused her power and authority as not only the mayor of Côte-des-Neiges-Notre-Dame-de-Grâce borough of Montreal, but also as deputy mayor of Montreal, because Sue's complaint against me with the SPVM was made on the 5th of December, and I was arrested just under a week later on the 11th of December when I went to Montreal City Hall to ask a question. The question I was actually going to ask was a question to Valérie Plante, the mayor of Montreal, regarding how one goes about filing a formal ethics complaint against a Montreal city councillor or mayor, etc. I was going to ask Valérie Plante, what policies and procedures does Projet Montreal as a political party have to accept ethics complaints about its members. But I was also going to ask, what other policies and procedures might be in place, such as policies and procedures put in place by the City of Montreal. And of course, the conditions, initially prevented me from going to City Council meetings. So I was basically prevented from asking that question by being arrested before I could ask it on December 11th. And then I was unable to ask it during the January city council meeting because my conditions hadn't been modified. They were finally modified on the 19th of February, expressly making it possible for me to attend city council meetings that were open to the public at both the Montreal City Hall and also the Côte de Neige Notre Dame de Grâce City Hall. There was a Montreal City Council meeting that night where, in theory, I might have been able to ask that question, but in all the hullabaloo and everything, I basically just wasn't aware of that, and so by the time I became aware of it, it was already in progress, and I wasn't able to sign up and ask a question. And it might have been a little too early to go and do that right away. Anyway, but in any case, that's it. Sue Montgomery has, in my view, and I believe most people will agree when they verify the facts, abusively misused Canada's criminal harassment law, which is intended to protect people who have legitimate reason to fear for their personal safety in the sense of being physically attacked, physically assaulted, and so on. That's what the law is intended for. It's intended to try and protect people from a physical assault on them. It's not intended to help them protect themselves from hurt feelings as a result of what someone's saying about them. So as I said, we will see what happens, but earlier this week, just a few days ago, a Radio Canada journalist in Gatineau was arrested on criminal harassment charges in a very similar manner. He was doing a story on the head of the Big Brothers organization in Gatineau, a woman, her first name is Yvonne.